All the builds that you are about to see are submitted by my community via Discord or my streaming community that happens on Tuesday nights. I'm going to be rating each one of these builds. I believe we're going to be doing 5 of them today, so let me know which one is your favorite down in the comments below, and let's see how my viewers did. First up, we have the Devourer of Gods. He's put together a build using the Axe Talisman, the Spear Talisman, the Rotwing Sword Insignia, and the Millicent's Prosthesis, and the weapon we're going to be using is the Ornamental Straight Sword. This is one of my favorite weapons to use, and I think it's vastly undervalued in this game, so we're going to see how this build performs. So I think overall the build is performing rather well as we're going through destroying these bosses here, but one thing that I don't like about this weapon, even though I just said it's one of my favorite weapons to use, is the fact that the charge time of the Ash of War is so incredibly long. What I mean by that is any time that you're going to do the combo, you can't roll out of the combo. You have to do it all the way through, and this leads you into areas where you're going to get hit a ton, and you're going to be trading damage a lot. But to get Golden Tampering to completely finish its combo, and to get every single attack to hit, you're going to proc every single talisman that he has in this build, and you're also going to be doing a crap ton of damage with all that pierce damage that is being provided by these ornamental straight swords. Now for our Flask of Wonders physic, we're going to be using the Thorny Cracked here and the Spike Cracked here for that heavy charged R2, which is all the combo of the Golden Tampering, as well as the Thorny Cracked here, which is going to stack with every single successive attack that Golden Tampering does. Now as far as the drip here, we have the Hallig Tree Helm, we also have the Lindale Knight Armor, the Tree Sentinel Gauntlets, and the Tree Sentinel Greaves. I think overall this set looks just fine, probably a solid 7.5 out of 10. Everything is gold, everything matches from top to bottom pretty well, and the swords also go with the gold in the pants, which is kind of dope. So well done overall. I think the build performs very, very well. I think I give this build a solid 8 out of 10. It definitely performs well, and I'm also going to leave the stats right here for you so you can check out the build. This next build is coming to us from Rotten Burrito, who's a commenter on one of my YouTube videos. Now, here's the deal. This entire build focuses on getting health back. So using the Holy Ground Ash of War on your shield, as well as Prayerful Strike on the Great Stars, allowing yourself to get an exorbitant amount of health back on hit, while also standing in your healing on the ground, allowing yourself to pretty much be unkillable. Now, this particular build is really fun if you're just running around the lands between killing normal to mid-size enemies. With Prayerful Strike, as well as all of the healing you get from this build, it makes it really fun, and you almost never die. I also really love the Ash of War Prayerful Strike because the hyper armor you get in the first part of that Ash of War is incredible, and you pretty much cannot get knocked out of it. That being said, I think this build is going to fall off late game just because of the bosses at the end of the game have a lot of holy damage negation. However, to get there, playing through the lands between, you are going to have a blast. So I think I'm going to give this build a solid 6.5 out of 10, only because it falls off at the very end game. But for the talismans, you're going to have the Great Jar's Arsenal, the Old Lord's Talisman, the Shard of Alexander, as well as the Great Shield Talisman. These are going to synergize very well for this particular build, so overall I was pretty pleased with the talisman choice. Now for your Flask, you're going to be using the Holy Shrouding Cracked here and the Faith Knot Crystal tier. Both of those are going to give you way more damage with this particular build, and it's going to make Prayerful Strike hit a lot harder as well. Now as far as the drip of the build, we have the Great Helm, the Hallig Tree Knight Armor, the Hallig Tree Knight Gauntlets, and the Hallig Tree Knight Greaves. Obviously it's going to look just fine considering it's all one set except for the helmet, but the Great Helm is the best helmet in the entire game, so I'm not mad about that. As far as the stats go, I'll go ahead and leave those on the right side of the screen so you can check them out, and then we're going to get into our next build. Now our next build is brought to us by Christ Checks. He is a Discord member and has been for a few months now, and he has put together a rather interesting Lightning Scarlet Rot build. Now I know what you're thinking, how in the world does that work? Well, it's actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Once you get Scarlet Rot to proc, you can slowly watch your enemies whittle down, and the Lightning Slash Ash of War we're using on the Rotten Battle Hammer is actually not that bad. The Battle Hammer is not a weapon that I see used often, so I was really interested to get into this build. Now I will say, because we're using a hammer, we have a fantastic ability to do a lot of staggers with this particular build. With the lightning damage and Scarlet Rot and the heavy stagger potential of the build, it's actually pretty good. I've enjoyed playing through the portion of the game that I've tested this out in, and I think I would definitely recommend it. Now I do feel that the build overall would be better if we really decided to min-max one way or the other, whether or not we wanted to do lightning damage or Scarlet Rot damage. If you want to go Scarlet Rot, obviously add the Mushroom Crowd for extra attack power boost, and if you wanted to do lightning damage, then maybe switch out one of the tiers for the Lightning Shrouding Cracked tier. But with this particular build, I think I would give it a solid 8. It's a fun build, does a ton of stagger damage, you're getting some decent criticals, and overall, it's not that bad. Now for your Flask of Wonders physic, you're using the basic stagger potential potential flasks. We're going to have the Spike cracked here and the Stone Barb cracked here. Both of these stacked together are going to allow you to play around your heavy charged R2s. And for our talismans, he's using the Rottenwing Sword Insignia, the Kindred of Rod's Exaltation, the Lightning Scorpion Charm, and the Axe Talisman. As far as the drip goes, we have a red and silver theme going on. It definitely looks pretty decent. Everything matches pretty well. I give it about an 8 out of a 10, but he's using the Fire Monk Hood, the Raging Wolf Armor Altered, the Briar Gauntlets, and Fire Prelate Greaves. I also want to mention that he is using Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow for that extra damage and damage negation, and I'll go ahead and leave the stats right here on the screen for you till we get into our next build. Our next build is coming to us from a Discord/Patreon member, and this is going to be CR Robin's build, which is a Dragon Communion incantation build starring the Reduvia and the Black Knife. Having double daggers is a ton of fun, but overall I do have some thoughts on this build that confused me just a little bit, so let's go ahead and see how the build performed. So when I got the build from CR Robin, he said that I could flex with whatever I needed for the particular build. The build was almost complete, but there were a few missing pieces like a talisman or two depending on what situation I was in, so I decided to build this entire build around Agil's Flame. Now, with that being said, one of my biggest complaints for this build is the mind stat. There just isn't enough of it. You have enough for just maybe one massive Agil's Flame, but then it goes out and you have no FP left. My biggest complaint was that the FP bar needed to be bigger in order for you to sit there and just blow a ton of fire onto the battlefield, killing a ton of enemies and bosses. However, the other options for this build like Dragon Maw and your Reduvia are going to hit incredibly hard. He also has us using Golden Vow and Howl of Shabriri, which even add more damage on top of the build. Now, there are a few min-maxing options you can do in order to make this build a little bit better, but in my opinion, if you wanted to take just this build in, you're going to be just fine. Everything is going to work out, you're going to do a lot of damage, and you're going to have a lot of fun playing. In my opinion, I would like to either go double daggers and focus solely on successive attack power, or focus solely on Dragon Communion incantations, but a great build nonetheless. I give it a 7 out of 10. Now, as far as the drip is pretty much the entire scaled armor set, which is dope, and the black mask, so you're going to look great no matter what, and I'll go ahead and leave the stats right here on the screen for you to check out. So the next build is from one of my Discord members named Kay, and it's a mixture of a Poison Dragon build. This was very interesting to me because there is a lot of really good dragon incantations, and Poison is always the unsung hero in my opinion. I love it so much, so this was a very interesting build for me to dive into. Obviously, there can be some min-maxing done if you really wanted to get the max amount of damage out of this build, but on New Game +6, it didn't perform badly at all. He left the drip up to me completely, so I'll share that with you at the end of the video, but I think you're going to find this build pretty interesting. So one of the stipulations for the build is he wanted me to have the Serpent Bone Blade in my offhand, so we are a poison build, so I just added another poison katana to the mix, giving us that really awesome dual katana moveset that you've seen so far. Now we do have some Crucible incantations that we're using, as well as some Dragon Communion incantations, and they do hit pretty hard with the stat spread that we have. This is a very interesting build when it comes to how it's played, because on one hand you have this really awesome katana moveset and you want to do successive attacks, but on the other hand you have these really big charged incantations that do a ton of damage when they hit as well. Now I think my only complaint for the build while I was playing it was that it didn't seem to have an identity. It couldn't decide whether or not it was a successive attack katana build or if it was going to be an incantation build. I know you can have a mix of those and do it very, very well, but it seems that there's just not any talismans here that are going to proc your incantation damage, nor enough talismans here to really warrant this being a katana build. Now when it comes to our Flask of Wondrous Physic, he's having us use the Spike Crack tier and the Opaline Hard tier, which is going to temporarily boost our charged attack power, but also increase all of our damage negation. I think overall I'd give this build about a 7 because we need to figure out what its identity is, whether it's going to be a poison katana build or it's going to be a Dragon Communion incantation build. Now as far as the drip goes, we're wearing the Black Hood, the Briar Armor, the Exile Gauntlets, and the Scaled Greaves, and for the talismans for this build, we're using the Erdtree's Favor +2, the Radagon Scar Seal, the Kindred of Rod's Exaltation, and the Rottenwing Sword Insignia. I'll go ahead and leave the stats on the right side of the screen here for you so you can check it out, and this is going to be the last build of the video. So guys, that is going to be it for viewer builds. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I loved going through all of your all's builds and checking out how you play the game, what you play with, and what your favorite builds are. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you have a build that you want in one of these videos, because I think I'm going to make a series out of this, go into my Discord, which is going to be linked in the description below, and go to the Elden Ring builds channel. Once you're there, place your build in the channel and we'll sort through them and get them in one of these videos. A massive thanks once again to all of the people who allowed me to use their builds in this video. This would not have been possible without you guys, so thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it a ton. On your way out, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell notification, and until next time, guys, stay safe, enjoy the game, and I'll see you in the next one.